one of the things I'm hearing recently around the oil and gas space, as is downstream oil and gas space, is that lending to those players in the banking sector has really slowed down significantly, largely because of a circular out of the central bank for more or less telling banks to limit lending to oil companies that have exposures at AMCON.
Yeah, that's true. Those who are having issues with their loans that are with AMCON, that are not servicing them, are actually having issues with the bank, because there was a circular from the CBN that advised or directed that banks should stop lending to such companies. It is not only downstream oil companies that were involved actually, but of course because of the nature of their business and how it affects the economy, they happen to be the ones we are looking at now. That has, for those of them who are having issues, it has affected them their ability to access new funds. Don't also forget that because of the subsidy issue that is still on, some companies have not gotten allocation from the federal government to import PMS. That has also affected their performance. Okay. But by and large, I think every one of them is slowing down, because they are also complaining that margin is thinning out on their business.
Right.
For example, if you look at the recent increase, fuel pump price was 65 naira,
yeah,
and their margin was 5 naira. At 97 naira, it's still 5 naira. So right, it means that they need to put more money behind every liter of product they sell. And then when you look at the yield, it has really, really come down. And that is going to affect their profitability ultimately.
All right, so clearly tough times for some of the players in that space. But let's move on to the Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference. And I want to get your thoughts on the key takeaways from that conference. One of the points that was raised was that Nigeria is looking to increase its production to 4 million barrels per day by 2017. But talk us through some of the other issues that struck you from that oil conference. Of course, it's a big conference that holds every year in Nigeria.
Yeah, the NOG conference, as you are aware, is the major oil and gas conference, particularly for the upstream sector. Even though it happens in Nigeria, I think it covers the whole of West Africa and the rest of the world, because that's where you see people coming in to look at opportunities that are available. Of course, we also know that one of the key issues every year is the minister coming in to tell us what the oil and gas industry is going to look like from now and into the future. One of the things that was discussed is the issue of PIB and what needs to be done about it.
Right.
The minister also talked about the need to put in place the gas infrastructure in order to completely eradicate flaring. Of course, that's going to involve a whole lot of money, but I believe the government, through the Ministry of Finance, is doing something about that to put cash behind those projects. The issue of increasing daily production to 4 million is an issue that is very, very critical to government. But of course, that cannot happen without putting a whole lot of investment into that segment of the oil and gas industry. You need to do a whole lot of exploration, but that means you need to do a whole lot of finding to increase first of all, you need to increase your reserve before you can increase your production to 4 million barrels per day. Now, if the PIB issue is not resolved, and I think you know that, I don't think anybody really wants to put money in that sector.
But what do you think was the sense that many of the participants in that conference got after the conference? Do you think we're closer to a resolution? Of course, many of the major oil and gas companies, the international oil and gas companies, have already suggested that it's highly unlikely they will make any major investments if the fiscal terms of the current PIB are not addressed.
Yes, I think I want to believe that we should be able to achieve something this year. When I say achieve something, I mean all issues should be resolved and the bill passed. Because of course, if that is not done, if you have a target of 5 years and you have lost 1-2 years already, it is clear that you are not going to meet that target. Everybody is aware that there are issues that need to be resolved, but the point everybody is making is that, look, it has to be give and take. I lose some, I win some, you lose some, and you win some, then we move on. But I believe they've gone far on that bill, and I want to believe that before the end of the next quarter, all gray areas must have been, dealt with, and we'll have a bill that is acceptable to all stakeholders.
So your sense is that by the end of June, we should have a bill ready to go?
Yes, I believe we should have a bill, because if we don't have a bill, just like you pointed out in the news just now, there is not going to be any bid round. And if you don't have any bid round, I mean, chances are that there won't be any new investments. And if there are no new investments, chances are that the 4 million barrels per day is not going to be achieved.
Yeah, well, I think that's quite obvious. But what else is going on in the oil and gas space these days, particularly with the local oil and gas companies? Of course, the internationals are a little more hesitant about making investment these days, but we know that quite a few of the locals are already buying assets from some of those international oil companies.
Well, what that tells you is that Nigerians are believing more in Nigeria. One good thing about the whole thing is that the industry, locally and internationally, accept the fact that Nigerians have the technical capabilities to run those assets, really, because they've worked with IOCs and they have done it with the IOCs. But and what that also says is that we are beginning to take control of the industry. The issue is still there, which has to do with funding. The banks are doing their bit in that regard. As a matter of fact, you will notice that most of the divestments and new investments that are coming up are being funded mostly by Nigerian banks.
Right.
So between the industry operators and the banks, we are already having some form of synergy and understanding among ourselves. But again, the investments by the locals, I mean the indigenous company, is not comparable to what is required,
right,
really, in the industry. We need a huge amount of money. For example, the minister made mention of the fact that one of the things this administration wants to do is to ensure that as much as possible the gas infrastructure project takes off. And the government is looking at funding that project through Eurobond, right? So that means that, of course, whether we like it or not, much as we are doing locally, we still need international investments to come in, foreign investment to come into that sector.
Okay, Luqman, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights. Luqman Agboola giving us some insights from Diamond Bank and on the Nigerian market and, of course, Nigeria's oil and gas space.